Hi, welcome to today's session on developing academic vocabulary. I'm Kate DeMio, the K-12 English Language Arts coach.
And I'm Jennifer Howe, the K-12 EL coordinator for Lake Orion Schools. Today we're going to share with you 10 tips, but before we jump into our tips, we want to define academic vocabulary. So academic vocabulary is the vocabulary a student needs to discuss the concepts that they're learning in math and science and social studies. For example, if I'm learning about weather in science class, then I need weather vocabulary, storms, tornadoes, volcanoes, hurricanes, etc.
Our first tip is actually pretty fun. It's called playing with words. So one of the things that you can do to develop academic vocabulary is to really invest in some fun word games for your house. So we'd like to share with you just a few of Jen and I's favorite games. So one game we like in our house, we love the game of Pictionary, right? And in Pictionary, you are drawing the picture and the other people are trying to guess what you are drawing. So, so this one, is kennel. So I would be drawing a kennel. And then everyone's trying to guess what I'm drawing. Okay. A nice way to just lift this up and make it a little more about academic vocabulary, you can add some of the words that your kids are learning about. Like if they're studying sharks, you might put gills, right? So that's just a fun way. You could make your own card. Another game that Jen's family loves. Jen, you want to tell them about categories?
Categories. So we're looking at list number 15 right here. And Kate's going to roll the dice. And when she rolls the letter dice, we have the letter C. So now each of us is going to write the numbers 1 through 12 on our piece of paper. And we are looking for things at a zoo that start with the letter C, and things that fly that start with the letter C, and things with claws that start with the letter C. And there's a timer, so you can time yourself and make it a little bit of a race too. And just like Pictionary, you could add a number 13 to your list and have shark vocabulary or weather vocabulary or animal habitats and tie that into what your child is learning in school as well.
So another fun game, shout out to the media specialist at Carpenter Elementary who told my family about this one. It's called Incoherent Family. And it's got these great little sayings. So this is what you're looking at when you look at the card. Tacoed ooze hay. And you keep saying it over and over again. And you can say it with different emphasis until they come up with Taco Tuesday. And you can even give a little hint, a weekly meal, right? So it's a really nice language game because it really causes you to have to think about what might be being said, but also to think about meaning. And again, if you wanted to do something fun and make your own, kind of mix in a few academic vocabulary ones, you could certainly do that. Okay, so that's our first tip.
Our second tip is paying attention to and discussing the directions of assignments that your children bring home. So I think Kate has an example here of this assignment where the directions are to sort it out, glue to match the beginning sound. And if we work on the words that students will see in instructions over and over and over again, like glue and match and sort, we're really helping them to be successful on their assignments that they're going to have all the way through school. And if we skip over the instructions, then they might not pick up those words. They might rely on their neighbors sitting next to them.
Even when your child's working at home, I think a lot of kids at home could figure out to grab some scissors and cut this up and to glue it, with the beginning sound without actually reading the directions. So it might even just say, oh, what were the directions on that? Or what were you supposed to do on that? Sometimes that might get them to use that word like wet match or glue that they otherwise wouldn't have used. Another tip that I love is called the word map, right? So let's say that your child, I've been using the example of sharks tonight, but let's say that your child is learning, reading, doing an animal project. They've been studying sharks, reading different books on sharks. And each day that we read a book or we study, we're kind of adding some words about sharks to our board. And whenever we can, we're drawing little pictures. Now, when my child goes to do an assignment or goes to do some writing, they can get out the words that they think will help them with that assignment. But also, you can do fun things with this. Like you can do things like, I'm thinking of a word that starts with the P sound. I'm thinking of a word that is something sharks eat. Okay, and you see how like the hints would help you get to plankton. Okay, or I'm thinking of a body part of a shark. Shine your flashlight on one of the body parts that helps them, no, that functions like lungs.
Nice.
Ooh, harder, right? So we get to play with the words, we get to try out the words, but what we really want you to consider is how much easier some of their assignments would be if they had this little word wall with some of the key vocabulary close by.
Could you put that back up there for a second, please, Kate? Our next tip is language. And if your child is multilingual, you can add your native language words to your word wall as well. And then we really want to encourage you to foster the development of academic vocabulary in both languages. So we know that a child's literacy skills, if they have literacy, if they have vocabulary in the first language, that transfers over into English as they are learning English as well.
I was going to write the word in Spanish, but I couldn't remember.
Well, in German, it's F-I-S-C-H. So, Pesca, maybe. Pesca.
I think it's something. Okay, something like that, right? Sorry, those of you who speak Spanish, I couldn't remember. Okay, now we'll move on to our next tip. So just like Jen was talking about, sometimes, well, let's talk a little more about your native language, right? So we're going to talk about writing and how important it is to talk before you write, okay? So let's look at a couple examples. The first example I want to show you is having your child draw before they write, okay? So what happens is when a child draws, they brainstorm ideas. And the lines here are limitless in terms of language, right? Like we draw the same in every language. So you kind of like would sketch out your story across comics, and you can even tell your story in your native language. This gives you a strong sense of story and you have a plan for what you want to do. One thing we can do to even lift this up more is if we are a good speaker of English or we have strong academic vocabulary, we can add a few key words to that for them so that when they go to write it, not only do they have a sense of the story and a plan, but they also have a little word bank. Okay. An alternative to that is you just have your kid tell you a story. So my daughter had to do an essay about the pandemic and how dance helped her get through the pandemic. And so as she was writing the essay, I was like, okay, how about this? You just tell me the essay out loud. Tell me what you're going to write on the paper. And while she did that, I wrote down some key words. I handed those words back to her and then was like, okay, now you've got like a little word bank to write your essay. Still, one more thing you could do for your child is you could actually get out the piece of paper that they're going to write on, or the computer screen, and have them sort of like, it's called writing in the air. Tell you exactly what they're going to write. Like say it out loud. Like, it was March in the year 2015 when we got the phone call. Like that's how it would sound versus I'm just going to write about. Okay. So that's called writing in the air, or talking before you write. Another tip.
Go ahead.
Go.
Our next tip tip is to enlist a writing coach, get a writing coach. So Kate has a story about her daughters in a moment. If you are on the Lake Orion Schools website, there is a list of National Honor Society tutors from the high school if you're looking for someone who might be a writing coach. And these National Honor Society tutors tutor for free for community service hours. And my own children at home love it when someone besides their mom is trying to work with them and teach them. So we would encourage you to do that. Kate has a story too, I think.
So also, like Jen, I actually have teenagers at home, and they don't particularly care to work with me, particularly on assignments of writing, right? And so one of the things that I do is I pay a high schooler to come over once a week for an hour. The kids can sort of stack up what assignments they need her help with. And I found that even if they don't need her help with anything, they actually will come up with something that she can help them with. Like she's going to help them study for a science quiz, or she's going to, because they know she's coming for the hour to work with them. So they'll like put homework aside. But sometimes it's just nice to have an hour a week dedicated to something. So if you want a writing coach or a reading coach, it does not have to be a teacher. Like this can just be a somebody who's there to sit by their side and cheer them on a little bit. What are we at already? Tip number 7?
Tip number 7 is to annotate. And we would encourage you, if it is possible, to consider purchasing some of the books that your child is reading in class. So Kate is putting down here the book Pride, and then encourage your children to write in the book. Reading comprehension is increased if I can write my thoughts and my questions out on the page.
And I know, one thing I always think of, like to really demonstrate this, is that when I was in college, we had the option to go to the library and use the textbooks, or sometimes somebody would say, like, do you want to share a textbook, or do you want to borrow a textbook? And I never did. I always wanted my own book, even though that book had been like $150, because I wanted to write in the book, because my reading comprehension went up when I would like write in the book, right? And we find that with kids who are working on academic vocabulary too. Text sets are another way to build academic vocabulary. So what we mean by text sets is, let's say that your child has been assigned a text on sharks that they're supposed to read independently. And the whole book's pretty challenging, right? So what I want to do is I want to look for a book that's easier than that book, sometimes uncomfortably easier. Like you have a 3rd grader and you're actually reaching out for like a 1st or a 2nd grade book. Because what will happen is they read this really easy book, they read it really quickly, and they will acquire some of the vocabulary. Like they might acquire pup or hatch or horn shark. And then when they go to read the more challenging book, they already know those words. So not only will they come across those, here it is, pup grows up, but now because they already know that word, they'll be ready for predator. Okay, and if they read this, now I've read 2 books on sharks, I'm really growing my vocabulary. Now you can put this one in front of me, and I'm going to really understand this one. And I'll be even adding more words. I might add barbell. I might add shellfish, because some of those other words weren't as difficult. Okay. So these were examples that kind of use a little bit older kids' text, but the same thing would go for, like, say a 1st grader comes home and they're reading about plants. And you actually reach down into like the kindergarten level and look for plant books. It's the same idea. It's building the kids up, right? If you have an 8th grader and that 8th graders were learning about the Revolutionary War, like our 8th graders do, right? You could look for Revolutionary War books written for 3rd or 4th graders. Use those before they read the Revolutionary War book that's been written for 8th graders. Okay. Jen, what would you add?
I would add that you can go to your local library and look for books, again, lower level books than the actual reading level and grade level that interest your child. So I have a set here about how-tos, a lot of experiments that you can do together, and they're fun, as Kate's pointing to play right there. As you're reading and conducting your own experiment, you're using the scientific process words and having a lot of fun together. So I would encourage you to utilize the resources at your local library too.
Now, we did give you examples of nonfiction, but you could even think about fiction in this way. So this is a little bit out of the box, but this is some Nancy Drew books, right? And so what you might do is you might read the first book to your child out loud and discuss it and have a conversation with them. And so much of the vocabulary then will be acquired through the read aloud. They'll get to know the characters, they get to know the setting, they get to know so much about the book. So then when they go to read book 2 on their own, book 2 will be easier. And book 3 will be even faster. And book 4 will keep that fast pace. So you can even think about fiction in terms of text sets. Tip number 9
is to check out some videos, and you can make videos part of your text sets. When you're reading your books on sharks, you can pull up a few videos about sharks as well. Most of the videos that you'll find are short. I think Kate's going to show us a resource where we like to get some of our videos too, but maybe after she shows you this book. Most of our videos are very short, so you can watch them a couple times with your child and talk about the vocabulary and what did you learn and what do you know about sharks before you read about sharks.
So sure, I got excited about the Groundhog's Dilemma. So
right.
the Groundhog's Dilemma is just a fiction. It's just a fun fiction story by a local author about Groundhog Day. But before we read this fun book, let's watch a quick video about Groundhog Day. That would build up our background knowledge, and that would give us a great sense of what Groundhog Day is. So our reading comprehension and our academic vocabulary surrounding this topic will go up, right? Even this one, like this is just a fun story, Michael Recycle. But like, how quick? 2-minute YouTube video about recycling before or after you read this really solidifies your understanding. Now, I've got a great website that actually is through the Orion Township Library that you can use. I've just got to. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to Orion Township Public Library. This one's great because you won't even need your library card to do it. So you go there, and then you're going to go to online resources from A to Z. And so one of our go-tos in the school district is this Pebble Go. So you're going to go to P for Pebble Go. And it has got great videos. So you can see we've got social studies, science, biography, animals, health. I'm just going to click on social studies.
Holidays.
Then I'll click on holidays. Oh, this is a good one. Got Martin Luther King Day. Okay. And I can read about Martin Luther King Day.
Dr. King's holiday history.
They've got like a little read more section. Okay.
Holidays.
Let me go to another one. We can
U.S.
let's go back. We could study science, and maybe we want to study
science and engineering practices.
And maybe we want to study weather.
Extreme weather.
Extreme weather, hurricanes. Okay.
And down
So
at the bottom of the screen, you can see if a student wants to cite the source, you can hit the citation. If you'd like to print the article, you can print the article. Oftentimes there's an activity that you can do around the book, and Kate's clicking on video down there at the bottom.
Right? This one's great. This is a 7-second video on hurricanes. So your child can like watch the video before hurricanes. It's great. The biography section's probably my favorite because it has every biography that you can possibly you can possibly think of. Okay. The last thing I want to show you with this is that there is another little tab. It says Pebble Go Next. It's really designed for our older students. But again, look at the topics, the hydrosphere and water sources.
I'm pretty excited about those video experiments down at the bottom too.
Right? That our middle schoolers are working on. So these are great resources if you're just looking for some quick videos to help build your child's knowledge. Okay. And our final tip for the evening
is to reread, rewatch, and review. So we know that, well, we're going to practice this with you. So we're going to ask you to watch a short video.
And let's see what you can remember when it's over. So let us get set up.
These tuxedoed waddlers are emperor penguins. You may not know it, but these semi-aquatic birds are some of the most dedicated parents in the animal kingdom. I mean, would you be willing to do what they do? Spend 65 days huddled here in this penguin pack in temperatures that can drop to 112 degrees below zero with winds of 50 miles an hour? Even Green Bay Packer football fans don't have it this bad. Fortunately, these big birds have evolved dense feathers and a thick layer of body fat. The remarkable thing is, the one who incubates the egg in a brood pouch is Dad.
Let's pause right there. So I'd like you just now to maybe stop the video and take a few seconds to just write down everything you remember about penguins. Now, I'm going to play the video again. And again, I want you to see what you can remember after you watch this video. Here we go.
These tuxedoed waddlers are emperor penguins. You may not know it, but these semi-aquatic birds are some of the most dedicated parents in the animal kingdom. I mean, would you be willing to do what they do? Spend 65 days huddled here in this penguin pack in temperatures that can drop to 112 degrees below zero with winds of 50 miles an hour? Even Green Bay Packer football fans don't have it this bad. Fortunately, these big birds have evolved dense feathers and a thick layer of body fat. The remarkable thing is, the one who incubates the egg in a brood pouch is Dad. Meanwhile, Mom goes off to sea looking for food.
I'll give you a couple of minutes. Just look at your notes maybe, or think about everything that you can remember about penguins. And if you're like us, you just can't stop writing. Because what happens is that first time, like you caught a little bit, you wrote down a few things, but after that second time, like you could just go and go and go, right? Like just keep on writing. This is pretty consistent with the research that supports rewatching or rereading. That the first time that you read something, you usually remember somewhere between 20 to 30% of what you read. The second time, that number can increase as high as 50 or 60%. But if you were to read or watch something a third time, you could be looking at remembering like 80 to 90% of what you saw or what you heard.
And
so like that's
even,
amazing. And if we can
to go even further, if we discuss what we see or what we read with our children, then we're giving them an even stronger benefit at using that vocabulary and increasing their comprehension and what they remember.
So it's a big task, but developing academic vocabulary in our children is totally possible. And there actually are things we can do to support them and guide them and make it happen faster. We thank you for joining us for the last 30 minutes, and we hope that you'll certainly have the opportunity to try out some of these.